I've probably had struggles with sleep since I was a little girl and being a really huge struggle until my late 30s. When we think of the psychology around insomnia, the root cause that keeps the struggle perpetuating is the fact that there's this inner fear. So it's a lot related to anxiety.
We know more about sleep than ever before. More research, more data, more trackers, supplements, advice. And yet, people are more exhausted than they've ever been. And when the day finally ends, the noise doesn't stop. It just follows us into the night. People are asking the same questions. Why am I tired even when I sleep? And how much sleep do I actually need?
Sleep is this incredibly active process. It's not just this having a rest and being sedated.
Stepping out of the noise and helping us reconnect with our body's natural ability to rest is my guest this week, Kate Blyth, a New Zealand-based sleep specialist and the founder of Intuitive Sleep.
Sleep quality is probably more important than quantity. It's not always about the numbers.
Together, Kate and I explore the growing complexity of sleep, the science behind how sleep actually works. We talk about why quality of sleep matters more than quantity, and why common sleep disorders like insomnia and sleep apnea are often misunderstood or missed altogether.
So there's just so many sleep myths out there, from melatonin to supplements to sleep gadgets, trackers. I could, go on all day about that, but what I tend to focus on is trying to take the stress out of sleep.
Kate also helps us cut through the noise around supplements, sleep trackers, and technology. This conversation is also about awareness, about understanding that sleep doesn't exist in isolation, because improving sleep often isn't about doing more. It's about simplifying, slowing down, and reconnecting with what actually supports rest.
There isn't any supplement that would make you sleep because that's not really addressing the two main sleep systems. So that's what I always come back to, is sleep is run by these two systems.
This episode is about turning down the noise of life, understanding sleep in a deeper way, and rediscovering the simple fundamentals that not just help us sleep, but also live better. Helping us turn down the noise and rebuild our relationship with rest in a world that never stops is my guest this week, Kate Blyth. Kate, welcome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
I'm excited. And before anyone listening, yes, Kate is from across the ditch in New Zealand.
Yeah, so I live in Wanaka, which is a small alpine ski town near Queenstown in the South Island of New Zealand. But I work nationally and internationally as well. So yeah, thanks to Zoom.
Yeah, well, and we
And
met
travel.
over in Europe. So
Yeah, I met in Sardinia last year at Synergy. Yeah.
Yeah, Wanaka, Queenstown. I always call that area like heaven on earth.
Yeah, well, after 4 months of travel last year, it did feel like that getting home. Very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Kate, what does the noise of life mean to you?
The noise of life, I think for me, life's just, well, for everybody, life's getting busier and there's a lot of noise, and it takes a lot of conscious effort to dial that down, because the norm is now the noise, and I have to constantly pull myself back, and I keep finding myself falling back in, even though I know what serves me. But because of the dopamine and the all of that, you constantly have to work at pulling back, because it is such a lot of information overload and stimulation for your nervous system that we're just not built to handle.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think one of the key things, and this is what I launched the podcast for, was really about getting people to, like a radio station, be able to tune into what they want to tune into, and kind of maybe dial back what they don't need to listen to or tune into, and really just focus on what matters in life and what matters for, them living their best life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So where did your journey in sleep begin, Kate?
Yeah, well, when I look back, I think I've probably had struggles with sleep since I was a little girl. I probably didn't get to interfering with my life day to day and being really a huge struggle until my late 30s. But I think that the sort of seed of doubt was planted very early on when I look back. And when we think of the psychology around insomnia, the root cause that keeps the struggle perpetuating is the fact that there's this inner fear. So it's a lot related to anxiety.
Mm.
And so for me, I think once I'd had that fear of, oh no, what if I don't sleep? How am I going to cope the next day? Once that seed's been planted, it's very easily grows pretty quickly and gets strong roots.
Yeah. When we think about, over the last few decades, what do we know about sleep now that we didn't back then?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've learnt a lot in the last few years, and I think that sleep's really come into the spotlight in especially the last few years, which is a great thing on one hand because there's a lot more research and understanding. So we know that sleep is this incredibly active process. It's not just this, having a rest and being sedated. We have REM sleep, which is the dream state. The brain looks on a sleep scan almost as active or more active than when you're awake.
Wow.
And it's only in the last decade or so that they've discovered a system called the glymphatic system in the brain. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
So you would have heard of the lymphatic system?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's essentially like the brain's own lymphatic system, but it's called glymphatic. So it's like a waste clearing system. It's a bit like plumbing in a way because overnight when you're in deep sleep, some of the vessels in the brain sort of widen, and that means that there can be like a washing system. When we're awake during the day, there's toxins and metabolites that sort of build up in the brain, which can be harmful over time. And so it's really important that we have good quality sleep so that we can wash away those toxins each night. So, like going back to your question, we've learned a huge amount recently about sleep, which is awesome. And it's come into the spotlight and it's become almost, fad, in terms of popularity and now trying to optimize. And I've sort of, my angle is moving away from that because there's a lot of information out there in the wellness industry around sleep, a
Mm.
lot of misinformation and a lot of misinterpretation. And that's fueling an epidemic of orthosomnia, in my opinion. And orthosomnia is when people are trying too hard to sleep. And when you're hearing all the messaging around sleep, a lot of it's creating fear because the information is things like if I don't sleep well tonight, I'm going to get dementia or I'm going to get cancer. So it's just putting more pressure on a system that it's an automatic biological function. It's evolved since, well, when you go back, since there were, the circadian rhythm, which I'll probably talk about later, developed where we think when there were single cell organisms in the ocean, in
Um,
response to light dark cycles. So it's incredibly old. It's every animal, plant has this circadian rhythm. It's ancient and it's evolved with us to be vital. So yeah, sleep is really, really important. But now the sleep industry and particularly people selling supplements or gadgets for sleep, which there are numerous now, they're making a billions. It's a $1 billion industry.
it's like anything though, right? Like it's always how can we market and make money out of it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think I find, especially in your industry, and I know a few, influencers or people that are talking sleep on Instagram and Facebook, and it's almost interesting because people go, "Oh, well, if the popular opinion is this, I'm going to go against that, and I'm going to find studies and research to go against that because then that makes me stand out." And it's
yeah.
like, hang on. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of misinformation out there for
Yeah,
people.
yeah, and people just, especially the media and influence, they'll grab a fact that is, sensationalist and then run with it, and it becomes mainstream. So there's just so many sleep myths out there, from melatonin to supplements to, sleep gadgets, trackers. I could, go on all day about that, but what I tend to focus on is trying to take the stress out of sleep. It's a automatic biological function, like I said. It's a passive process. It's something that doesn't respond well when we put pressure on it, a bit like performance anxiety. I like to think of it as like, if you're trying to hold a bar of soap in the shower and you hold it too tightly, it, flies away. So
Yep.
it's really important to, yeah, take the stress out of sleep and come back to the two main mechanisms in the body that run sleep for us.
Yeah, that's great. You talk about rest and you talk about not forcing, and it's interesting. It takes me back to just before Christmas, I had surgery, and now I hate sleeping on my back, and I just can't do it. But it was interesting. I had to because of surgery. I couldn't sleep on my stomach, and we might go into sleeping positions later. But the interesting thing was, I was searching up on Google, and it was like just try and rest. Don't try and go to sleep.
Mm,
Just
yeah.
try and rest.
Oh,
And
you've
I was like,
nailed it.
I was like, wow. Because the interesting thing is when we're trying to go to sleep, and I remember I was laying in the hospital bed and I was like, oh, I've got to get to sleep, got to get to sleep, I've got to get to sleep. And then when I searched up and I thought, how do I get to sleep? How do I sleep on my back? How do I make it more comfortable? How does this work? And yeah, it just said, don't try and sleep after a
Mm,
surgery or when you're on your back or if you're in a position that you're not normal to. Just try and rest. Anyway, I did. And I went to sleep.
yeah.
And so it was really, really interesting. My brain wasn't going, you can't sleep on your back. I just kind of
Mm.
surrendered.
And it's so easy to go down the other way and down the sleep rabbit hole, which is how insomnia is often triggered for people because it's triggered when there's a life event and life things always happen. There's, like you said, you had surgery or you might have jet lag or a grief or, there's hundreds of things that can cause sleep disturbances. But what normally happens then is that seed of doubt forms and people start going down the sleep rabbit hole of how do I problem solve this? Like, oh no, I'm not sleeping and I need to sleep and that pressure to sleep. And that's what starts that self perpetuating cycle. So, yeah, well done you for getting that good advice and for naturally like following your instinct in that moment because that's where it all starts for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really surprised me. Now, Kate, it's interesting. We said over the last few decades, we know more now than we did years ago. But that doesn't mean our quality of sleep has got better. It's actually got worse in many cases. And I was doing some research the other day about some of the top questions. So I thought I'd run through some of the top questions on
Yeah,
what
great.
people are Googling and what people are searching,
Yep,
because
cool.
that really leads to knowing what people are struggling with out there. So the first one was why am I exhausted even when I sleep?
Well, yeah, that's a great question to start with. And I'm all about sleep quality. And the research is also showing that I was at World Sleep Conference in Singapore last year, and there are great studies now backing this up. Over recent years, we have tend to evolve with the thinking that we need 8 hours, and we focus a lot on the number, but the quality of sleep is so important. And it can be there's a lot of different reasons why that can be disrupted, and I probably couldn't go into all of them, because part of it is it's very personalized, and I do a really thorough assessment. But for, the common ones, the first one I would say would be sleep apnea. And then there's also, common culprits like caffeine and alcohol and substances. Stress is also another one that can, cause a lot of activation in the nervous system. And when our bodies don't feel safe, then evolutionary, it's important for us. We wouldn't have survived as a species if we could sleep through, a bear outside the cave. So
Yep.
it's a safety feature that we can wake up. If there's a fire alarm in our kitchen going, then it's good that we can wake up from that, or the baby crying or whatever. So it's important that we are able to wake up, but now that we have so many other things going on, like I mentioned, it means that sleep can become more shallow and we can have more awakenings due to that baseline stress level and hyperarousal, hypervigilance that the mind kind of wants to come up and surface more often to check that you're safe.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
another question that probably links with that is, why can't I switch my mind off at night?
Yeah, and I like to think of sleep as, our nights are often, what happens in our night is often a reflection of what's happened in our day.
Mm,
And when we, wake up looking at a phone straight away, hit with, horrible news stuff or work emails straight away, and then, go the whole day, and there's no chance for the brain and the mind to just be bored or to have time to process thoughts and emotions. Even these days, you're often going for a walk and we're listening to a podcast. And then it's like go to bed at night, and it's a bit like, coming to a stop sign and driving 100 miles and trying to just hit the brakes. We need that
mm.
wind down, that sort of coming into land like a plane. So yeah, I often recommend to people that are struggling with these thoughts that come up during the night is to spend, 15 minutes sometime during the day writing down thoughts or worries, and just once you've got them out of onto paper, it's easier for the brain to sort of know I thought about that, I've had opportunity. But otherwise it thinks, well, this is the only opportunity that I've had. There's no space. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And I know I suffer from this. And when I was a business owner, and I still kind of, it happens now. And I know a lot of people struggle with the same thing is that I always wake up between kind of 2 and 4 o'clock.
Yep. There's again quite a few different reasons why that can happen, and one can be stress. If we haven't processed stress during the day, then that's a time where that can wake. It sometimes can wake us up, but also it may be that it's actually a normal part of sleep to wake up during the night. We have sleep cycles, roughly every 90 minutes, and that's built into the natural sleep architecture probably because, like I said, you need to sort of check you're safe and then go back to sleep. So we have, you know, awakenings throughout the whole night, and that's normal. But but often we are awake for that moment, and if there's stress, then that can sort of snowball and you start thinking about things because you haven't had that opportunity during the day. But also it's really easy to go, "Oh no, I'm awake. What's wrong? Why am I awake?" And that really is like shaking up a snow globe and activating the nervous system rather than, "Oh, yeah, that's normal. I'm awake." And if again, it's like you said, when you're not worrying that you're, awake, then you're not ramping up the nervous system.
Yeah. And
But yeah, yeah,
there's probably some new parents that are listening to this thinking, God, I wish I could just wake up between, once in the night, not
yeah, yeah,
many
yeah.
times.
It's all relative, isn't it? Yeah.
What were we going to say?
um, oh, I was just gonna wondered if you wanted me to sort of go into the sleep apnea side of it a little bit more because that just ties into what we were talking about with awakenings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I know
Um,
there's a lot more awareness of sleep apnea now, but there'd be a lot of people listening that might not know what it is, and it'd be great to hear one, what is it for those that don't know, and also what are some of the things that might be happening to them right now that may actually mean they might need to go and have a sleep study. I had a sleep study last year, which was interesting, and you feel like you're like a robot experiment or something like that, laying in a bed for the night. But yeah, I'd love to hear your knowledge and experience on that.
yeah, so I don't treat sleep apnea. I am very I Yeah, I really prioritize looking for it and always looking out for that red flag because if it's untreated, the risks for long term health problems like the scary stuff like stroke and heart disease, those kind of things increased hugely, and it can be missed quite easily. So for me, it's a massive red flag to always assess for. And even though you're saying, yeah, it is great, there is more awareness around it, I still feel like the awareness is quite tied into the stereotype of sleep apnea.
Mm.
So, you've probably, heard that generally people that have sleep apnea might be older males, they might be overweight, have really loud snoring, and that messaging, I think, perhaps is getting a little bit more well known. Uh, but it can be a bit more insidious than that, and that's when it gets missed, and it can also present as insomnia. So you were saying, nighttime awakenings. Well, that's a classic, sign of sleep apnea, and I have people that come to me, thinking they have insomnia. They often say, "I fall asleep fine." But then I wake up at that 2 or 3 AM, and I wake up with a jolt, and I feel like I've had a shot of adrenaline, and that's when I have a red flag for sleep apnea. So the first one being, they say my head hits the pillow and I fall asleep. And interestingly enough, my husband was, one of those, non-stereotypical presentations. He's early 40s, fit, slim, didn't wasn't a bit of snoring, but not really loud, but he thought that, I'm a great sleeper because I was struggling with insomnia, and I was the one tossing and turning, and he could sleep through everything, and I would be frustrated looking like, "Why, how can he just sleep through?" But it's actually a sign that you are sleep deprived if you are falling asleep as your head hits the pillow. And it's normal for sleep to take around, 5 or probably closer to 15 to 30 minutes to fall asleep. That's actually normal. So it's like if you're starved and hungry and you just inhale your plate of food, it's a bit like that. So, yeah, one is falling asleep really quickly or being really sleepy during the day, and then it can cause these nighttime awakenings that you sort of awake for no apparent reason and sometimes waking up feeling quite stressed.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it's incredibly common, like over 40 in males, probably 1 in 4. Once you get to 60, it's can be closer to 1 in 2. So it's incredibly prevalent. And then the consequences when it's untreated is, like I said, pretty scary stuff. The other scary thing is that 80% they think of people are undiagnosed and walking around not knowing they have it. So it's
Mm.
huge, huge numbers. Um, I think people that I talk to tend to say, "Oh, no, 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 I don't have sleep apnea. Oh, no, I'm not that person, and I don't want that CPAP thing." But there's other treatments, but also it doesn't present in the classical way. So many people just think, "Oh, I've got insomnia," or, "Oh, no, I'm a great sleeper because I head hits the pillow." But other ways that it can present, which I find probably more interesting because it's easier to spot the snorer that's, waking up the partner all night with the loud snore, but it can be other things like frequent urination and waking you up throughout the night,
Yep.
waking up with a dry mouth in the morning, waking up with a headache, and general sleepiness throughout the day. So yeah, if you're struggling to keep your eyes open, when you sit on the, couch at lunchtime or in the evenings, then that's a sign that you might not have that sleep quality. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, that's good. And obviously with, some of the sleep apnea causes obviously disruptions to sleep, and we're talking about sleep as a whole as well. And, some of the research and some of the things that have come through from health perspective of, I know, if you don't sleep and, if you don't get enough sleep, enough restful sleep, you've got higher inflammation in your body. What are some of the other things that, you can be affected from a physical health perspective?
Yeah. In terms of sleep apnea specifically, when you think of what's actually happening, it's the airway is collapsing, and so it's like you're getting strangled. Like, imagine that someone's coming into your room and throttling you, for some people, every couple of minutes throughout the whole night, and that's a pretty stressful thing for the body. So when that happens, when the airway collapses, it sends a, emergency signal to the brain, "Wake up, I need to breathe," and a little shot of adrenaline. So the body doesn't get that opportunity for deep rest. So one, the sleep architecture is interrupted throughout the whole night. But the other one is that you've got this constant adrenaline getting released throughout the whole night. And that means things that are under circadian rhythm control, like your heart rate, which should be the lowest overnight because it needs a rest. That's the time that your body gets a rest. Your heart rate's the lowest, your blood pressure's the lowest. Those things can remain high. And then those are sort of like the root causes that lead into a picture of higher inflammation because we're not getting that quality sleep.
The interesting thing is, and I think probably when we go from sleep apnea, disruptions in sleep, people not sleeping right, um, how how much does technology have a part to play in how bad our sleep is?
Well, I think it can obviously be really interfering, but it does depend on personality. And some people are really caught up in the Instagram spiral and binge watching shows and that kind of thing, and that can displace sleep, and then you're not getting enough. But the latest evidence, and I don't know if you followed Dr. Michael Gradisar, who is an incredible Australian sleep scientist, and he's done a lot of research on the fact that the blue light from phones is actually not very strong in terms of the lux. That's how we measure light intensity.
Yep.
And so it's probably less of an influence than we think. That's again one of those, sleep myths that has been, probably overinflated over the years, yeah.
Mm. Is there any research around how we kind of prepare for sleep? You know, a lot of people go to bed, pick up their phone, doom scroll, as we're talking about technology, or they might just, kind of rush through their evening routine and then they try to go to sleep. Is there any tips around what people should be looking at on how to prepare for sleep?
Yeah, so I approach it a little differently, but I'll just lightly touch on that wind down routine before I go into why my approach is a bit different there. So yeah, it's definitely helpful to have a wind down because if you can't go from 100 to 0 and just ram on the brakes if you've had a really busy day. So a little bit of a buffer between work and bedtime is really helpful, but not necessarily this long-winded or precise bedtime routine.
Yep.
That actually causes a lot of trouble for people with insomnia because they feel like they need to keep adding in more and more things. And then if I don't have my lavender essential oils and my melatonin and my valerian and everything, all of that sleep hygiene stuff just perfect, then that's creating more performance anxiety, more
Mm.
pressure.
Yep.
So everyone's also different too. Some people have more sensitivity to light or to watching a emotional show. So we're all quite different in that regard. And my personal wind down routine is not very complicated at all. Like I dim the lights a bit because otherwise, if you've got bright overhead lights, it's kind of signaling daytime. But I don't worry too much about the small amount of light from a phone. And it's really like, just brushing my teeth and reading a few pages of my book, and
Mm.
sometimes I might meditate in bed before, but, um, our brain is a really good pattern recognition machine, and so doing simple things like brushing your teeth and reading your book, you're doing it consistently night after night. It kind of is training your brain, "Oh, yeah, sleep's coming." So I don't think it needs to be that complicated, in my opinion, and I look at sleep in terms of how we're setting up our days is actually more important than what you do right before bed. And so I do get a lot of questions about what do I do right before bed? How am I going to improve things? And I say actually the morning is where it all starts, and it's much more influential what you do in the morning than what you do right before bed. So having a consistent wake up time, um, weekdays and weekends, roughly, within sort of 30 minutes or so. And then pairing that with getting bright outdoor light within the first hour or half an hour, ideally, of waking up. Those two things combined, they directly affect our two main sleep mechanisms in the body, one being sleep drive or sleep hunger, and the other one being circadian rhythm. And those are essentially the two main systems in the body, and that's what sets up good sleep. Even this morning sunlight helps the timing of melatonin roughly sort of 16 hours later. And so it's our days and also movement and having light throughout the day. These days we about spend about 90% of the day inside, and that is very, very dim, and our eyes can't really tell the difference between the brightness of outside and inside because LED lights seem quite bright. But inside an office environment or our rooms right now might be a couple of hundred lux, but outside even on a cloudy day is probably 10,000 lux. And
Wow.
so we're getting really mixed signals and not strengthening our circadian rhythm, which is, like I said, has evolved over millions and millions of or billions of years. And so it's vital that we send these strong signals of contrast, like this is day and then this is night, and coming back to a more, linked with the way that our bodies have evolved.
Yeah. Now, when people are going to sleep, I know for me, I used to take an anti-anxiety medication, mainly not for anxiety, but just to kind of make me sleep a bit better. And the doctor, it was actually my psychiatrist, said to me, he said, "Oh, instead of that, he said, go and get some magnesium, right?" So I take magnesium, not every night, but some nights, um, and that seems to help. Are there any other supplements, or what are your thoughts on taking supplements before bed?
Yeah, great question again. The magnesium one is, yeah, very common. The evidence for supporting sleep is not strong. I think if you're deficient in magnesium, that some magnesium might have a benefit, and that I think it can help with recovery and if you're doing a lot of exercise. But it's not my specialty looking at supplements for that side of it. But in terms of sleep, as far as I'm aware, there isn't any supplement that would make you sleep. um,
Yep.
because that's not really addressing the two main sleep systems. So that's what I always come back to is sleep is run by these two systems. They're the engines of how sleep works. We need them to be strong, but we also need both of them to be aligned.
Yep.
And so there isn't really a supplement that is addressing those systems. So I always fall back onto, I mean, the basics seems too simple, and also sometimes behavioral change is harder. It's much more enticing to think, "Oh, can I just take a supplement and then the job's done?" But in a way that is starting to affect the psychology of how we our relationship with sleep. Because if we outsource the sleep to a supplement, that, in my opinion, is essentially saying to your brain, I need some extra help to sleep. I don't really trust that I can sleep that well without it. And some of it would be placebo, and it can get you down a little bit of a slippery slope of relying on more and more and then adding in, oh,
Mm.
that didn't work that night, so maybe I need more, or maybe I need to add something else in. And then we suddenly have this problem solving lens around sleep where we think it's a problem to solve. And as soon as we get our hands in there and try and micromanage sleep, that's when things tend to backfire. So I personally don't work with supplements. I think that there is some of the evidence for reducing anxiety, like having some valerian and some supportive things there if there's general anxiety. Perhaps that brings down a bit of baseline anxiety and can help, but it very, very easily gets a slippery slope into the going down the wrong sleep rabbit hole. So I tend to work more with sleep psychology and our sleep biology.
Yeah, brilliant. So anyone that checks out your profile after this isn't going to see any discount codes for supplements, you know?
No, not all. Yeah, I'm very Try to be authentic, follow the evidence, not about making money on products. The only product that I recommend to clients to use sometimes is a type of light therapy glasses. If you are living somewhere where you, in wintertime especially, and it's dark for maybe 2 hours before you have, gone to work, especially where I live in Wanaka, it's dark till about 8 a.m. So I
Yep.
do use light therapy glasses then, so that's just in place of the sun. But again, that's working with these two main sleep systems, and so therefore it is valuable in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And obviously we spoke about, technology and digital and screens and everything, kind of emerging over the last couple of decades, and we kind of can't live without looking at screens and blue light and those. But talk to me about, how diet has influenced our sleep as well.
Yeah, there is some research that I've seen, and again, that was something that I explored at the World Sleep Conference last year. And it looks as though, yeah, a general healthy diet and having fiber and protein definitely influences and can help promote better sleep quality. Um, and so I think there's been some links to, Mediterranean diet and obviously there's a huge connection between gut, because, there's
Yeah.
melatonin in the gut and serotonin, all these pathways that are related to sleep. Um, but again, my approach is to not get too micromanagey in terms of that, because I don't want people to start thinking, oh, maybe I'm missing this vitamin and therefore my sleep's broken because of that, because that the sleep beliefs are so powerful. And as soon as we get down that path of micromanaging, um, then we, yeah, can spiral pretty quickly. And yeah, essentially we want to trust the body and also um, know that your sleep's not broken, because you can't really lose the ability to sleep. If when you traveled home from our trip last year, I'm sure you would have experienced that extreme sleep deprivation when you may have been awake, 24 hours. And I know
Mm.
I had that on the way back. I had back to back flights for 24 hours and I'd stayed awake for 24 hours. And then my sleep drive was so, so, so high when I got home that even though I was jet lagged and my circadian rhythm was mistimed, my sleep hunger was so high that I slept for, like a log for about 8 hours that first night. And
Yeah.
so you can't lose that ability for sleep drive to build. It's a molecule called adenosine that builds during the day. So the longer you're awake, the more of this adenosine is building and building and building, like hunger. And so, yeah, that's trying to focus on the majors, not the minors. Um, and I guess I specialize more in helping people with chronic insomnia and getting out of that struggle. Um, if someone was wanting to sleep optimize and they're, say, an athlete and they're wanting to, get those 1 to 2% gains and look at sleep trackers and what nutrients, that's a whole different person to help. And so it's hard to give blanket sleep advice when there are different people with different needs. And sometimes, someone needs to be able to optimize different supplements and nutrients and all of those things because of what their needs are. But most
Mm.
of the people that I'm helping, in general, need to get that fear reduced rather than get into micromanaging. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Sorry, that was
relationship of
probably delved off a little bit. And
that's all right. The relationship of sugar and caffeine in sleep.
Sugar and well, it's probably 2 different things. I probably wouldn't
Yep.
lump them into one.
Yep.
But if in terms of caffeine, it's not that you can't have any caffeine. It can be quite helpful when you're tired to have some in the morning, but just making sure that there's enough of a window before bed. And it can be a little bit more insidious, because there are people that say, "Oh, I have an espresso before bed and I go to sleep and I'm fine." but a bit like alcohol, you're not a very good judge of what your sleep quality is like when you're asleep, and so you can't really see the fact that it's changing your sleep quality and your sleep architecture, and that can be quite detrimental, to mood and to, performance and that kind of
Mm.
thing. Mm. And then in terms of sugar, I think there is some research saying that, especially in the evenings, if you have a lot of sugar, that can be a bit alerting. But I tend to just focus more on helping people optimize their circadian rhythm across the 24-hour day, and that does include looking at meal timing. So not having a late sugary dessert. It's more about bringing all of your calories to a close a couple of hours before bed so that there's time for digestion to do its thing. And then a really important part of good quality sleep is that we need a core body temperature drop to fall asleep. And if we're having, a lot of calories in digestion, then that can interfere with that process.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was reading up recently, and they were talking about, and any people that are in relationships here will kind of relate to this, but it's always like one kicks off the blanket, or one, it's these different temperatures. And I was reading up recently around how men and women, um, their optimal sleep temperature is different.
Yeah, and it's just is definitely very personal as well, I think. That's probably a bit
Yep.
of a stereotype.
Yep.
I think everyone's different and it changes through the seasons with menopause and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it
Yep.
is good. There's those duvets that you can have that have, different weights.
Yep.
But yeah, generally a cooler bedroom helps better quality sleep.
Yeah, because I
Mm.
think I think from just from memory from the research, I think it was saying that um, the research that they'd done overall on men and women was men like their optimal temperature is like 17 to 18 degrees, whereas
Mhm.
females are more like 22 to 24 degrees, which I thought was
Oh,
interesting.
yeah. Well, I'd be an exception to that because I live in Wanaka where it's pretty freezing in winter and I have the window open, so I like a pretty cold room.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you spoke about like I have a Whoop band, so I monitor my because I've had chronic fatigue.
Mm,
So I monitor all my biometrics, and I find it's pretty good for showing okay, you had a restful night's sleep, or this is when you woke up. Um, and then it's also got a journal, so you can actually journal you know, how much sugar or carbs or those kind of things. There's a big
mm,
list that you can kind of choose from. How much caffeine did you have? All these different things, and I find it's good to just work on. Oh, hang on, this I ate this or I had this at this time and it affected my sleep. So,
mm.
do you use a sleep tracker?
No, I don't use a sleep tracker. I've never used a sleep tracker. I know personally that I don't have a personality that would do well with it. And there
Yep.
has been research that shows that we are quite influenced by what we're told about those sleep metrics.
Yep.
There was a study that they did where they told people that they'd slept a different amount, and then tracked and questioned them to see how they responded. And people that were told they slept 8 hours but had only slept five, and then the vice versa, it reflected in the way that they went about their day and how they felt they could cope with their tiredness. So if they were told that
Yep.
they slept more but they actually slept less, they sort of felt okay. But if they had told they slept 5 hours and they'd actually got eight, they thought they were tired. But what was interesting too is that it also affected their performance. It wasn't just their outlook. So I, yeah, personally don't use them. I think from what you're saying, they can be really great for that long-term behavioral change and tracking. I wouldn't be personally recommending people sort of looking at individual nights, and also the sleep architecture and staging is often not that accurate. I think a lot of people don't have the sleep knowledge to understand those metrics. People often think, "Oh, no, I only got 20% deep sleep," but that's a normal number, and it's also not super accurate. It's better at knowing when you've fallen asleep and when you've woken up, but as we've talked about today, sleep quality is probably more important than quantity. It's not always about the numbers. So, yeah, I think that they can be helpful for long-term behavioral change. I think that for someone that doesn't prioritize sleep, so I'll give my I'll give my cousin as an example. He was a, high-powered lawyer, and he said, "I just sleep 5 hours a night for 15 years and just worked, and you can sleep when you're dead," and all that mentality, which is starting to change. Then he listened to, Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, and sort of freaked out about all of the, "Oh, sleep's important. This is what can happen if I don't sleep." So then he went down the other route, other extreme, had, probably wore 3 trackers and had a cooling mattress and trying to optimize the heck out of it. And I think that's probably a path that would get unhealthy. But, I mean, for some personalities, and like you say, just picking up on that behavioral change and maybe noticing, some nights that you drink alcohol and you go, "Oh, I can see how that's had a bigger impact than I thought." Those kind of things, it could be helpful, but for most people, I think they can be quite dangerous in terms of affecting how you think about, your sleep and your resilience to coping with tired days.
Yeah. Very early on, I've had my tracker probably 3 years now, and it's interesting because it never works properly when I travel because you change time zones, and it's like, hang on, you're sleeping on a plane or you're sleeping this, and then the time changes. So it takes a few days to it throws it out of whack.
And
Um,
it's also
but
based on algorithms too, so if you're doing something out of the ordinary, it's not gonna be able to really suss out what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good as well at, like, for me, going through chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety when I was going through my mental health stuff, it's good because I was able to print out like a 30-day report and give it to the doctor, and it would show me like when I napped or, how many sleep I got and some of the trends. But now I don't really look as much as the sleep takes part in recovery and how much strain. So,
Mm,
when I wake up, if I'm in green recovery, it'll say, yeah, you can push a little bit more today.
yeah.
Or if it's in red, it'll say, hey, you might need a little bit more rest. So I've found that's actually been pretty consistent and pretty reliable for how I
Mm,
feel. So sometimes I'll go, I am not feeling that great today, and I'll look at my phone and it'll be in the red.
mm.
But also as well, back to what you were saying, I think sometimes if I wake up and I, check my stats, and I don't really check them as much as I used to, but if I check my stats and it's green, I'm like, oh, feel good today.
Definitely
So
plays into it, yeah.
there is a bit
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
You're talking, we're talking about hours on, and it's one of the biggest questions. How long do I need to sleep, Kate?
Yeah, well, yeah, good question. Like we've been talking about, it's not all about numbers, and it is very, personal. The 8-hour myth is, well, for adults, it's the range of normal sleeps around 7 to 9 hours, and 8 hours is just simply the median. I
Yep.
think if they were gonna pick a number, that probably would be a little bit closer to 7 than 8. The But it varies a lot, and it varies individual to individual. Some people need a bit more sleep, but some people might think they need more sleep just because their quality is not good. If you've got sleep apnea and you're sleeping for 9, 10 hours, but then still not waking up refreshed, then that would be a big sort of red flag. So it does come back to sleep quality, I think. Um, but yeah, also I think that it's really important to focus on the consistency of the circadian rhythm, waking up at a similar time, and not focusing on the numbers, but focusing more on quality and also how you feel. Like if you've if you've if it's mid morning and you're kind of feeling fairly alert and awake and you're not falling asleep, in your office meeting and not falling asleep watching TV in the evening, it's probably a sign that you've got enough sleep.
Mm,
Sleep also varies night to night. It's not just an individual set amount. I think if we've got a number that we think I only cope when I have my 7 hours every single night, then we're setting ourselves up to fail a bit because it's normal to have some bad night's sleep. Everyone,
mm,
there's variability. There's also Exercise has and movement has a huge amount um, to play into that.
Mm.
So if you've been sitting at your office all day and you haven't done any exercise, then you're not building up as much of that sleep hunger, that adenosine, those signals which tell the body I need deep rest. And so you might have maybe not need quite as much sleep. But if you've just done an overnight hike or run a marathon, you know when you've had days like that you just sleep so solidly. And there was a study last year where it showed that the muscles release substances that tell the brain how much recovery the body needs.
Wow.
So that was really cool and exciting to see that there's this communication between skeletal muscle and and the brain and our sleep needs. So a big part of sleep for me, and especially as I get older, sleep can become a bit lighter, and those awakenings that I talked about can become a little bit more frequent, which is we're designed to deal with that as we age, so it shouldn't be a problem. But I do find for me that if I haven't done movement every day, that my sleep isn't as deep. And so, yeah, for me, a big part of it is always moving and getting in those steps. It doesn't have to be, huge or high endurance stuff, but just walking for an hour every day is great for my sleep.
Yeah, perfect. Now I've got 2 teenage sons, and I remember when I was a teenager as well, I could sleep 12, 14
Oh,
hours,
yeah.
like, they're
Wouldn't
always
be
in bed.
Yep, that they teenagers often have a delayed circadian rhythm. So, kids start off with quite a advanced or early circadian rhythm. They're annoying the parents waking up at 5:30, and then some physiological changes happen where the sleep drive doesn't build quite as fast, and they have a tendency to shift later and later. So it's not that they're being lazy, it's just that their body clock's shifted, but they do have an incredible ability to sleep. Like, been traveling around Europe with my teenage boys, the last few weeks, and they can sleep. I'm trying to keep myself awake on a flight so I know I can sleep when I get there, and they can sleep the whole flight, and then they can get to the destination and sleep for 10 hours, and, like, I wish we could all stay sleeping like teenagers, but it's not reality for
Yeah,
everyone.
I said to one of my sons, who's now, oh, he'll be 19 soon, but, yeah, a couple of years ago, and he loves his sleep, and he can just sleep and sleep and sleep, and, I joked to him, I said, "Oh, there's the World Sleeping Championships, you could enter, I reckon you'd go
They
far in
might
it
be
because."
competing against my son.
Oh, it definitely is amazing.
Yeah.
Kate, can we touch on, for someone sitting there that's going, "I'm just struggling with my sleep," where do they start, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it's important to focus on the fundamentals of how our sleep works. So coming back to circadian rhythm and sleep drive, are we having a consistent wake up time, getting sunlight, having good daylight exposure during the day, and then also having a dimmer environment in the evening, and reducing stress, getting movement, like coming back to the basics. That stuff is fundamental. But sometimes I think it just sounds a bit too boring or easy to be that significant, but it's how our biology works. So coming back to those simple things, and most things that are fundamental and good at promoting better quality sleep are free. So sunlight, exercise, stress relief practices, those things are fundamental. But I think if you've got any red flags, like for sleep apnea, non-restorative sleep, waking up tired even though you've been asleep for, a full night's sleep, that's really important to jump on. This home sleep tests are really great now. You can get sent out a monitor that you pop on your finger and get a report back. So it's quite not too invasive, and the risk's just too high to ignore when it comes to untreated sleep apnea over a long period of time, increasing
Mhm.
the risk of dementia and heart attack, stroke, those kind of things. So yeah, I'm always really encouraging of people to yeah, get a sleep study done. I think, like, the colonoscopy and all of those routine tests, I wish that GPs and, yeah, just, like, free health, that was part of the assessment, because
Mm.
it's just so underdiagnosed, and it's so prevalent, and, yeah, I think that, people just think, "Oh, that's not me, I wouldn't have sleep apnea," but it is so common, so, yeah, those probably be my main ones.
Yeah, perfect. And I think when you're talking sleep apnea, like we were earlier as well, yeah, a lot of people go, "Oh, I don't want to be diagnosed with sleep apnea because I've got to get the Darth Vader mask."
Yeah, yeah,
But there's some better technology coming out around that. It's a lot smaller in some cases now, and there's some different devices I know being
yeah.
kind of researched and launched into the
Yeah,
market,
my
which
husband has one of those mandibular advancement devices, so it's just like wearing a mouth guard, and
yeah,
that keeps the tongue from falling back, and that's solved his sleep apnea. So there are other options out there.
wow, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, it's great. Yeah, and then the other thing I'd add to that is that if you've got insomnia or awake, insomnia, the definition of insomnia is taking longer than 30 minutes to fall asleep more than 3 nights a week for 3 months, or awake during the
Mhm.
night for longer. And because, insomnia is the self-perpetuating cycle, and the body's very, very good at, this pattern recognition machine, and the sort of automated response that becomes a learnt, conditioned thing, that getting treatment earlier is the way to go, because otherwise it becomes so ingrained and it doesn't go away. People try
Mm,
and they think, "Oh, no, I just need to improve my diet, or I need to take this supplement, or I need to do this," and the sleep rabbit hole, it doesn't address the root cause of chronic insomnia. So, yeah, getting help from an expert early is really important.
yeah, perfect. And I'm a big obviously with my health journey through my mental health, I obviously try to raise more awareness of people getting their annual checks and getting their annual blood tests to just keep on top of things. When people are getting blood tests, Kate, are there some deficiencies that can help that can affect sleep as well?
The main one in terms of, like a blood test, would be with restless legs. The latest research is showing that low ferritin stores are quite strongly linked to restless legs.
Yeah.
So that's quite a strong link. I think that B12 can also affect sleep, but, yeah, generally, I tend to just look at the main levers in order to improve sleep. And then if we worked on all of those, built a strong baseline through the behavioral change and the, sleep biology, then I would send people off to a GP, to look at other things, but, it's not a
Yeah.
starting point normally. Yeah.
Because I know cortisol plays a big part in how people, kind of regulate their bodies as well.
Yeah, cortisol is, definitely not a friend of sleep. And so that's really important, and a big part of the work that I do is addressing, stress, because that can definitely interfere a lot.
Yeah, perfect. If there was one kind of message that you could give listeners, Kate, from today's episode, what would it be?
Yeah, great. So I would say that the number one is consistency. It sounds boring and sounds probably too easy and insignificant, but the latest research is showing that the consistency day after day, with a regular wake up time, and coupling that with getting outdoor sunlight, even on a cloudy day, every day of the week, is one of the most powerful and fundamental things that you can do for your sleep. And the other one I would say would be to not try and over control and micromanage sleep. It's this passive, automatic biological function, and a huge part of good sleep is trusting that your body knows how to do it and not trying to sleep. So, yeah, I think you nailed it with it with your one when you were going through your surgery.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. So for those that want to kind of tune into more of what you share or contact you, get some more information, where's the best way to connect with you, Kate?
Yeah, great, thank you. So, I'm Intuitive Sleep. At Instagram, I'm intuitive.sleep, and my website is intuitivesleep.co.nz. But yeah, follow along on Instagram. I try my best to post some evidence based, non fear mongering sleep advice.
Yep, yep, and
Yeah,
non-supplemental, because I know a lot of the accounts out there, I can, it's always like, for 10% off, for 20% off, for 15%
yeah,
off,
yeah,
to get
yeah.
your
So,
introductory pack of supplements for sleep.
exactly, no,
Um,
that's a pet peeve of mine. So I don't go down that path.
yeah, no, awesome. Well, I'm really grateful for your time today. It's been great to have you share your insights
Yeah,
on
it's been
a
great.
topic that a lot of people struggle with. And I know I've got a friend who does a lot of study around health and our battery and how we're going health wise. And, two things, sleep and fun, are probably the two things that are the lowest on a lot of people's kind of health checks. So for people listening, I'm sure they'll take a lot away to implement in their sleep.
Yeah, great. Sorry, did you say sleep and fun?
Yeah, sleep
Yeah,
and
yeah,
fun.
yeah. I love that because if you were talking about sleep psychology, I would say like fun first and then sleep follows. Like it's not about perfecting sleep in order to have a good life, but it's
Yep.
totally just going out there and doing life and not overthinking sleep. And then sleep's this natural byproduct of your day rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and I think about it as well, and we'll finish on this, but I think about it, if I've had a really good day, I've had great human connection, lots of love, some laughs, and I go to sleep, I sleep probably the best that I have.
Yeah, yeah. So simple stuff,
Rather
eh?
than having this stressful day, going to sleep feeling absolutely burnt out, worn out, stressed, there's all these outside noises, then you don't sleep that well.
Yeah, but also it's about still prioritizing those meaningful moments when you are tired. Because if you think, oh no, this is a tired day, it's going to be horrible, I can't go to that social event, that's when it spirals. Where if you're like, actually, I can still find joy in my day, even though I am struggling, then I think that's where you get more on that upward trajectory out of the sleep struggle.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kate, and I look forward
Thank
to connecting
you.
again soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. Thanks so
All right.
much.